Have you ever had a customer who, the moment you saw them walk through the door, you just knew your whole shift was about to turn into hell? I used to think I'd seen every kind of drama the service industry could throw at me until Delina showed up. A single mom with a chilling smile, a designer bag, and a bizarre white noise machine, right in the middle of a Silicon Valley diner. But let me tell you, I never could have imagined that what started as a difficult customer would turn my entire life and our little restaurant upside down, sweeping us all into a hurricane of chaos from slander and petty revenge on social media to courtroom battles where a child's future was literally on the line. This isn't just a war between a server and a monster customer. It's a journey through toxicity, blind justice fear, and the compassion buried in every one of us. And if you've ever wondered, can one small person really make a difference against injustice? Stay with me until the end of this story. Chapter 1. The first day I met Delana. If you've ever worked in the service industry, you know the feeling those days when the regulars make you want to jump out the window, but you still have to slap on a fake smile, swallow everything all for minimum wage, and a handful of lousy tips. I used to think I'd gotten used to every kind of customer. But then I met Delana, and every definition I had of nightmare was completely shattered. I was waiting tables at a small restaurant in the heart of Silicon Valley, right next to a big elementary school. Every day I had to deal with moms toting designer bags, hair perfectly styled in shiny curls, nails that looked like they just left the salon, always busy living their Instagram lives, but they never tipped more than 10%. I thought I'd gotten used to those types, but honestly, I was never prepared for Delana. I remember that morning like it was yesterday. The restaurant had only been open for 10 minutes, and I hadn't even caught my breath when I heard the slap of sandals and the clatter of a suitcase dragging across the wooden floor. Delana walked in, hauling a massive black duffel bag. It looked more like she was heading into battle than coming for breakfast. Next to her was a little girl, maybe about 9 years old, with blonde hair and and her head down, looking like she just wanted to disappear from the world. Delana dragged that black bag right into the middle of the restaurant, completely ignoring everyone around her, and then shouted, "Is there anyone serving here? I need some service." I hadn't even had a chance to respond before she handed me a long, black cable. "This is a white noise machine. I can't eat without it. What are you standing there for? Plug it in, or are you waiting for Christmas?" I stood there stunned for a few seconds. I dealt with a lot of difficult customers, but no one had ever dragged a whole white noise machine into a restaurant and demanded it be plugged in right in the middle of the dining room. For a split second, I honestly wanted to take that cord and tie her to the chair just to keep her still. But luckily for Delana, my boss Maria was standing behind the bar staring straight at me. Maria was the cool boss type she'd often let staff off early and toss in a pastry bonus at the end of the shift. But that day, Maria gave a cold order: just help her out, plug it in, and get it over with. So I held my tongue, grabbed the machine, and struggled to find a socket. The moment that white noise started blaring, a loud static cutting through the previously quiet room, I could feel the annoyed looks from some of our regulars. But Delana didn't care at all. In the next 5 minutes, she kept pushing her luck, pinching my thigh when I bent down to clear the table, laughing as she said, "You should try losing some weight. Dresses look better that way." Complaining, the plates were dirty. The water wasn't cold enough. The lighting was too yellow and made her look bad. She even went so far as to switch off the light above her table just because it didn't fit her feng shui. Honestly, I wanted to throw down my serving towel and go home to write my resignation letter, but I was young, still owed rent, so I told myself it would just be one day and it would pass. I mustered all the patience I had and asked her what she wanted to eat. Delana didn't even look at me. She just jerked her chin at the menu. "Give me a salad. Exactly one cherry tomato. No more, no less." I looked back at Maria, hoping for a little sympathy, but Maria just sighed and told me to hang in there. What I didn't know at the time, Delina was actually going through a divorce. Her husband had just left the family for another man. Maybe that's why she dumped all her anger onto everyone around her, and I was the first target. I thought maybe I'd get used to it eventually, but that was only the beginning. From that day on, Delina officially turned my shifts into a never-ending battle with no end in sight. Chapter 2. Escalating conflict. Delana doesn't know when to stop. I had hoped Delana was just a momentary workplace accident, but I was far too naive. Just one day later, she showed up again, this time looking even worse than before. Her hair was a mess mascara smudged like she'd cried herself dry in the car, but her drama queen energy was as strong as ever. I had just brought out some water when Delana suddenly grabbed my wrist, squeezing lightly but enough to make me freeze. Got a gift for you, she smirked. I looked down and saw her shoving something into my hand. A home STD test kit. I nearly dropped the entire tray of water. Delana leaned in close, her eyes wild. I know your type. That innocent face, those big doe eyes, maybe you can fool some little boys. But I can tell what kind of person you are from a mile away. I glanced at her daughter. The girl's face was as pale as a sheet, clearly wishing she could just disappear. Honestly, I wanted nothing more than to slap Delana right there, but Maria appeared behind me, her eyes begging me to please just hold it together. I gritted my teeth and forced out a reply. I'm clean, but thanks for your concern. But Delana wasn't about to stop there. Every single day she came back, dragging her white noise machine into the center of the restaurant, acting like the place belonged to her. I started dreading every shift. Just seeing that black duffel bag at the door made my heart drop into my stomach. Then one day, while I was trying to clear a table, my favorite regulars, Andrew and Steven, walked in. They were the sweetest couple, always tipping up to 40% and letting me try new dishes whenever the kitchen changed the menu. Serving them felt like a shot of dopamine in the middle of chaos. I silently thanked the universe for a little motivation to survive, but that joy barely lasted 2 minutes. As soon as she saw them, Delana immediately shot up her chair, screeching across the floor. This is a family restaurant, you people need to show some decency, she yelled, pointing right at them. Andrew pretended not to hear, while Steven, usually the calmest guy, looked like he was about to go into battle mode. Delana wouldn't let up. She turned to me and snapped, It's bad enough. My husband turned out to be one of them, and now this restaurant is full of people like that. Do I have to eat while looking at this, too? I just wanted to crawl into a hole. But Maria rushed over, apologizing nonstop, trying to calm things down, whispering that Delana was going through a tough time. Please be understanding. Andrew and Stephen nodded reluctantly, but I could tell they were hurt and disappointed. They left without ordering anything, leaving me with a bitter, guilty feeling. After that, I seriously considered quitting. I had already written my resignation letter in my head, just waiting to hit send. But then Maria slipped me a mango-flavored candy like she always did whenever I was about to lose it, and whispered, As long as you stay, I'll do everything I can to protect you. Hearing that my resolve wavered, and I convinced myself to endure one more day. But I had no idea the biggest shock was still waiting for me the very next day. Chapter 3, the day Delana crossed every line. I thought, after what happened with Andrew and Stephen, Delana would at least feel ashamed, or maybe avoid me for a while. But no. The very next day, she showed up in a way no one expected, wearing a knockoff red carpet evening gown in the middle of a blazing summer day. The way Delana strutted into the restaurant, bright red lips, a strangely confident gleam in her eyes made the entire dining room stare. Before I could even process what was happening, Delana started loudly boasting to everyone in the room as if she wanted the whole world to know about her victory. My daughter has officially become a young lady today. Then she turned, leading her daughter, who was also wearing a similar dress, though it was clearly not age appropriate. The girl stood there, head down in embarrassment, while Delana paraded her around with over-the-top pride. When I came over to take their order, Delana looked at me with a provocative glare, her voice high and dripping with innuendo. My girl is about to be the hottest beauty queen in the whole school, probably even hotter than you. She jabbed her finger right at my face, going on and on for everyone to hear about how girls need to be seductive, need to stand out, need to catch men's eyes. My stomach twisted in knots. The whole restaurant fell silent, guests glancing at each other in discomfort, and the kids sitting nearby just looked on, confused. Before I could react, I saw Maria quietly approaching a folder of receipts in hand, her face cold as ice. Maria set the folder down on Delena's table and said softly, "Delena, I've been patient long enough. All of us have. This ends now." Delena scoffed, her tone sharp. "What's that supposed to mean?" "You're kicking out a customer." Maria answered, completely calm. "For the past 6 months, for every one of your bills. I've matched the total and donated it to an LGBT youth support fund, all in the name of Delena M. Thanks to you, you've helped raise over $3,000 for disadvantaged children. They even sent you a thank you plaque. I hope this lesson is enough for you to stop." The entire restaurant froze. A few customers snickered while Delena was so stunned she couldn't utter a word. But honestly, that joy was short-lived. I glanced at her daughter. Her eyes were pleading, terrified, and more hopeless than ever. I understood then whatever happened at home was far worse than what the girl had to witness here. Just a few minutes later, two CPS social workers walked quietly into the restaurant, their badges swinging from their necks. The air felt frozen. The little girl panicked, rushing over to cling tightly to me, whispering desperately, "Please don't let them take me to foster care. I'm so scared." My heart sank, my hands trembling as I felt her small body clutching me like a life raft in a raging ocean. At that moment, Delena instantly shifted, switching from demon to angel in the blink of an eye. She flashed a charming smile, invited the CPS workers to try her specialty dish for free, and played the perfect mom role like she'd rehearsed it her whole life. Maria calmly walked over and told the CPS workers that the restaurant's camera system had recorded everything for the last 3 months and that they were ready to provide any footage for the investigation. I heard customers whispering, several people pulling out their phones to quietly record what was happening. All I could do was stand still, a swirl of fear and helplessness tightening in my chest. I thought the drama would end there, but in reality, the nightmare was only just beginning. Chapter 4: When the Nightmare Exploded, Revenge and Collapse. Maybe I'll never forget that afternoon, the day when everything in my life officially turned upside down. Right after CPS arrived, the atmosphere in the restaurant felt as heavy as lead. Delena put on her model mother performance so perfectly that even I felt chills. She beamed with fake warmth, inviting the social workers to try her special dish, endlessly talking about the struggles of being a single mom, but how she always loved her daughter with all her heart. She even insisted they should enjoy a free lunch because you all work so hard for the community. But behind that smile, I could clearly see her hands trembling. The little girl still clung to me, her eyes full of tears, stammering, "Please don't let them take me to foster care." I didn't know how to comfort her. That was the first time I truly felt the weight of the responsibility on my shoulders and the helplessness in the face of a system I had absolutely no control over. Just when it seemed things might settle, Delena suddenly got a phone call. She put it on speaker, screaming at the man on the other end, her ex-husband, Marcus. The tension in the restaurant was like a tightrope, as Delena accused Marcus of orchestrating the whole thing, deliberately making her look like the bad guy, even bribing employees to ruin her reputation in the eyes of society. The little girl couldn't take it anymore. She burst into tears, begging her parents to stop fighting. Other customers began turning away. Nobody wanted to watch this family's private tragedies unfold in public. CPS quickly intervened, escorting everyone out to the parking lot to avoid further chaos. Standing there in the scorching sun, I overheard a social worker coldly announce that they'd received a report from the school about the girl describing her mother's special model games in her class essays. For a split second, Delena's face went white. Then she spun around, pointed right at me, and screamed that I was the one with bad intentions toward her daughter. I was stunned, instantly letting go of the girl as if I'd touched fire. Luckily for me, Marcus, still on the phone, quickly listed out Delena's wrongdoings, backed up by threatening messages she'd sent to his new boyfriend. He promised to send all the evidence to CPS. Everything happened so fast, I couldn't tell what was real and what was a nightmare anymore. In the end, the girl was placed with Marcus temporarily while Delana sobbed and collapsed in the parking lot, so distraught they had to call an ambulance. All I could do was stand there, feeling a strange mix of relief and fear for the future of everyone involved. Not even 3 days later, I received a little gift. My car was keyed so deep that it spelled out BTCH, along with a flood of messages and photos of me and Maria posted in local moms' Facebook groups, twisting the story in every possible awful way. That night, my apartment felt colder than ever. My housemates quietly asked if I should move out, worried they'd get caught in the crossfire. I just stayed silent, realizing things had gone far beyond a difficult customer. This was a real battle, and I didn't even have a shield to defend myself. The next morning, Maria called me into her office. She looked more worn out than I'd ever seen her, and I understood my nightmare had only just begun. Chapter 5: Legal Counterattack. When media becomes a weapon. Just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, Delana proved to me that the limits of revenge are basically non-existent. The next day during the lunch rush, a stranger walked into the restaurant and handed each of us a thick stack of papers. They were all cease and desist letters and demands to stop defaming Delana, sent by her lawyer. A feeling of injustice lodged in my throat. The woman who had insulted and humiliated me and my coworkers in front of customers was now playing the victim, dragging lawyers in and painting us as the villains in the eyes of the law. But that's life. Some people are just masters at putting on a show. But that wasn't the end of it. The drama started spreading even further than I imagined. Suddenly, the restaurant's Yelp page was bombarded with one-star reviews, hundreds of nearly identical comments. This place discriminates against single moms, staff harass children, management is complicit. Some of those reviews even included photos of me taken secretly at who knows when. Maria had to spend hours calling Yelp customer service, begging them to remove the fake reviews, but every time one was deleted, 3 more popped up like mushrooms after rain. That night, I got a message from my mom. I just saw the local news. Why are you involved in a scandal with a single mom? Why do you always have to make such a big deal out of everything I didn't know how to explain? Even my own family started to doubt me, all because a news segment showed Delana sobbing, talking about the pain of being abandoned by society. It wasn't just me. Maria got dragged into the crisis too. I was called into her office where she confessed she'd secretly collected evidence of Delana's behavior for months. But the company's lawyer warned that many of the recordings might be illegal because the customers hadn't been notified. Worse still, the owner of the restaurant chain called and pressured Maria to fire me to ease the media backlash and protect the brand. Maria refused. For the first time, I saw her grip her phone so tightly, her hand shook with anger. I will not throw my staff under the bus just to dodge a scandal. If I have to close down, so be it. Hearing that, I was both touched and scared because I knew every decision now came with a heavy price. Then social media erupted all over again. Delana's new boyfriend, a gym trainer who looked like he was born to stir up drama on livestream, launched a whole TikTok channel rallying the mom community to boycott the restaurant, leading a campaign called Protect Delana, Fight Toxic Restaurants. His videos spread at breakneck speed, drawing in hundreds of comments, threats, insults, and more hateful words than anyone could ever control. I started to realize this fight was no longer about a salad or a white noise machine. It was a war between truth and prejudice, between the powerless and the violence of the media. And for people like me, who had only ever endured in silence, being forced to stand up and protect ourselves, every morning I nervously checked my car for new scratches. Going to work felt like marching into battle. At night, I lay awake, wondering whether I should quit or keep enduring to defend justice for myself, my coworkers, and that poor little girl. but every choice comes with a steep price, and I knew the worst was still yet to come. Chapter 6: Crisis of Trust. When everyone starts to fall apart. Ever since Delana launched her war on all fronts, the atmosphere in the restaurant turned into something toxic and suffocating. I didn't even want to set foot there anymore. Every morning when I walked in, the once familiar faces of my coworkers now seemed distant, tense. Everyone looked at each other with suspicion and fear, never knowing who would be the next target of Delana's wrath. Maria looked utterly worn out, dark circles showing through her thin layer of makeup. She always had her laptop clutched to her, reviewing every second of camera footage, every accusation, every doctored photo spreading across social media. I knew Maria was desperately gathering all the evidence she could to protect me, the restaurant, and what was right, but I could also see the hopelessness in her eyes. The pressure from the chain owner, from the media, even from people who had once been friends, now cut deep, like invisible wounds, inside each of us. My coworker, Alexandra, the best server, always full of positive energy, quietly handed in her resignation. She said she couldn't take customers constantly filming her, interrogating her, and the groups of strangers gathering outside chanting slogans in support of single mothers' rights. They plastered banners on the windows: "Don't separate mothers and children. Don't discriminate against divorce." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. People who once supported me were now pulling away. Part of them were afraid of getting dragged in, but part of me wondered if they were starting to doubt whether I and Maria were really the victims after all. Many nights I lay in my tiny apartment, listening to the endless ping of messages. Threats, insults, even posts accusing me of child abuse, destroying families. I felt like I was free-falling in the middle of a vast ocean with nothing to grab onto. The final blow came when another coworker bluntly asked me in the kitchen, "Are you sure you want to keep going? Too many people have already been dragged into this. Delana's old babysitter lost her job over all this. Now she has to stay home. Is it worth it?" That question kept replaying in my mind, an unhealing scratch. I wanted to give up too, but every time I thought of the little girl, her pleading eyes, her trembling hug the day CPS came, I just couldn't. My personal life wasn't any better. My family back home called my mom, sobbing, begging me to stop and stay out of other people's business. My friends either stayed silent or sent half-hearted messages encouraging, but also suggesting I just let things play out. I suddenly realized when you choose to stand up, not everyone will walk with you all the way. Meanwhile, Delana only grew more aggressive. She hired a private investigator to follow staff digging into everyone's past to use as a weapon. Out of nowhere, my own college mistake, a minor weed charge I thought had been expunged, was dredged up and dissected online. Delana even hired lawyers to file lawsuits trying to prove I was unfit to testify. The little girl was still living with her father, but I heard she'd become withdrawn, afraid of strangers. All her visits with her mother were now supervised. My heart was always heavy with worry, afraid that everything I'd done hadn't protected anyone and had only pulled more people into the whirlpool of misery. Maria had to cut my hours to keep me from being too exposed, but also because the restaurant was losing customers fast. Regulars disappeared, afraid of getting tangled in the drama. Business dropped, staff were exhausted. Some blamed me for making things worse. Others just stared at me with pity. On those final nights, I cleaned up the tables and chairs, feeling like I was sweeping up the shattered pieces of trust that had once held us all together. I began to question everything, even why I'd ever thought this was a fight worth having. But deep down, I knew only the truth could save that little girl. And as long as I could stand, I wouldn't let Delana win so easily. Chapter 7: The Justice Spiral, when even the truth is suspect. Just when I thought I was numb to all kinds of drama and petty revenge, Delana showed me that human cruelty and the helplessness of the system could stretch on forever. 3 weeks after CPS first arrived, I got terrible news. The judge temporarily allowed Delana supervised visitation with her daughter on the grounds that there wasn't sufficient evidence of immediate risk. I was speechless watching Delana walk out of court with her head held high, her face smug, as if she'd just won a huge battle. Maria tried to reassure me the system is tough, but the truth will come out eventually. I just gave a hollow smile. I wasn't sure anymore. That was when I began to realize I'd become the public face of attacks on social media. Delina's new boyfriend, the gym trainer, posted daily videos calling on everyone to condemn the restaurant for destroying traditional families. The Silicon Valley moms Facebook groups took turns distorting the truth, plastering my photo on all kinds of fake news stories, even making up rumors that I was mentally unstable and had a history of stalking children. Worse, Delina's relatives hired private investigators to follow me all the way home, scrutinize every Instagram post, and dig up even the tiniest mistakes made by staff to fabricate evidence. A simple photo of me having coffee with friends at a bar was cropped and spun into proof of a depraved lifestyle. Privacy vanished completely. I started to fear even my own reflection in the mirror. But what hurt the most was the division within the restaurant itself. Some people said Maria and I had stuck our noses in too deep, pushing things too far and dragging too many innocent people into the mess. Others blamed us for not calling the police sooner. Why did you wait so long? Tension during shifts got so high that even the sound of a glass breaking made everyone jump. My friends gradually pulled away. My family called anxious, telling me to know when to stop. I felt like I was standing on a battlefield, not knowing who was right or wrong, just that I was more exhausted, scared, and alone with every passing day. As for Delana, the more her side praised her, the more she performed. During each supervised visit, she live-streamed scenes of her and her daughter playing happy family, all fake smiles and laughter, then used those clips to turn the tables and accuse Marcus, her ex-husband, and anyone else who dared speak up. I knew in the shadows that little girl was still the biggest victim. Marcus messaged me telling me his daughter hardly spoke to strangers and showed signs of depression. My heart broke, realizing that all my efforts felt like throwing pebbles into a deep lake. There might be ripples, but could I change anything? But it didn't end there. Delana hired the best lawyer in town, a specialist in protecting mothers' rights. This lawyer manipulated the courtroom like it was his personal stage, twisting every piece of restaurant evidence into deep fakes, arguing it was all AI generated. Even security footage showing Delana hitting her daughter at the mall was brushed off, who hasn't lost their temper once in a while. The trial dragged on. I was forced to testify to repeat the things that little girl had once whispered to me, and seeing the pain and hopelessness in her eyes, I realized even if we won, I had lost her trust. There were nights I lay awake, wondering if I'd made the right choice in taking things to court and getting involved in a family that maybe I should have just left alone, like everyone else. But every time I remembered her sobs, I told myself, if I stay silent too, who will be brave enough to speak out? So I kept going, part narrator, part protagonist, part reluctant witness to a battle where justice sometimes seems murkier than we imagine. Chapter 8. The System's Dead End and the Last Efforts. If you think everything becomes clear at this point, reality is even more brutal. The deeper I got into the spiral of the lawsuit, the more I realized that the justice system isn't the lifeline we imagine. It can actually turn every victim into someone stranded at a crossroads with no way out. The court sessions dragged on endlessly, each hearing feeling like an exhausting battle. Delana's lawyers would stoop to any trick, flipping evidence, dismissing every testimony, even bringing in experts to analyze the surveillance footage and argue that all the evidence was deep fake. Sitting there listening, I felt suffocated beneath a mountain of convoluted logic. The truth stood naked, while lies were painted over with legal jargon and the claim of defending mothers' rights. The most painful thing was watching those who had witnessed the truth slowly retreat. Coworkers feared getting caught up, loyal customers kept their distance. Even the parents, who'd seen Delana berate and hit her daughter in public, wouldn't testify, afraid they'd suffer the same attacks and slander I'd endured. For the first time, I understood what it meant to stay silent to save yourself, and how it feels to be abandoned in the fight for justice. One day, the mother of the girl's classmate came to me quietly, sharing how she'd seen bruises on the child's arm at school, and heard stories of the adult games Delina forced her to play. But when I asked if she would testify, her answer was just a sad shake of the head. Downcast eyes. "I'm scared. I have a family. I have little ones." Everyone told me to give up. Even Maria sometimes wanted to let go, especially after Sebastian, the restaurant's co-founder, angrily accused her of sacrificing too much for strangers and pulled his investment, sending the business into deeper crisis. That night, I saw Maria crying alone in her office, admitting for the first time, maybe I was wrong to fight against such a big machine. But even in the darkest days, there were still flickers of hope. Andrew and Stephen, the gay couple once targeted by Delina, came back to the restaurant bringing surveillance footage from their own boutique, proof that Delina caused trouble everywhere she went, not just with us. They said justice might be slow, but it's not invisible. "We'll stand with you till the end." I didn't give up either. Even exhausted, I kept reaching out to everyone who'd witnessed Delana's abuse, encouraging and persuading them to testify, even if it was just a tiny confirmation. I gathered every line of the little girl's secret diary, every detail, every desperate look she ever gave me, to turn all of it into her voice at the final hearing. Outside the courthouse, public opinion was still split. One side hailed Delana as the victim of a woke system. The other raged over the neglect of children's rights. I felt so small and hopeless, like I was flailing in a sea of blind people unable to tell what was right or wrong. Right up to the last moment, I was never sure I could win, or if I would simply be drowned by a system that never favored the powerless like me. But I knew, as long as I kept trying, as long as I held on to faith in small things at least, I hadn't betrayed my own conscience. And I told myself, even if everyone else turns away, even if justice is riddled with cracks, as long as one person dares to speak the truth, hope isn't gone. Chapter 9, Facing the Truth and Resolution. Does justice really win? The final trial dragged on for days, and I, exhausted as I was still, had to sit there listening to each side argue, to the lawyers' endless back and forth, to evidence being twisted and challenged like a never-ending courtroom drama. Delana continued to play the role of the suffering mother, weeping as she told her story of discrimination and the plot to destroy her family by our restaurant. Her team of lawyers used every trick to dismiss the evidence, surveillance footage, co-worker testimonies, even the trembling diary entries of her daughter. But in the end, the truth can't be hidden forever. The guardian ad litem, the court-appointed advocate for the child's welfare, finally delivered an honest and objective report. Each page of the girl's diary, every heartfelt confession about staying home to comfort her mom, having to skip school because her mother was too sad to be alone, her writings about fear, loneliness, and her dream to simply be an ordinary child, silenced the entire courtroom. For the first time, I saw Delana drop her head, hands gripping her pockets, as if she was afraid the whole world was turning its back on her. Even her mother, the woman who'd once cheered Delana on the loudest, couldn't look up, only mumbling apologies. "I should have gotten my daughter into therapy sooner." Maria, the mentor and boss, I'll be grateful to for the rest of my life, took the witness stand, presenting all the video evidence, analyzing every moment of psychological abuse, every strange behavior Delana inflicted on her daughter. This time, Delana's lawyers had little ground to challenge it, because a technology expert confirmed that the footage was completely authentic, untouched. In the end, the court ruled Delana could visit her daughter, but only under strict supervision while participating in therapy and mandatory parenting classes. Marcus, the ex-husband, was granted full custody, and the girl would have her own counselor to help her heal. I thought I'd feel vindicated seeing Delana fall apart, but in truth, it was a strange emptiness. Looking at the girl's eyes, relieved yet sad, I understood that justice is never truly complete. Some wounds never heal, no matter how hard we try. After the trial, a few regular customers returned to the restaurant trying to rebuild the old atmosphere. Maria gave me a brand new notebook, telling me to keep writing down everything I witnessed that was unjust in this world, because somewhere a small voice can still change someone's destiny. I smiled, realizing how much I'd grown, how much stronger and wiser I'd become after everything. Delana quietly retreated from her online battlefield. Her social media accounts faded, the barrage of complaints and accusations finally subsiding. I heard she really started therapy, that for the first time in her life, she listened to a professional admitting she needed to change. And me, after everything I kept working, but I was no longer the naive server I once was. I was more cautious, more resilient, and understood now that sometimes standing up for the truth also means losing a lot of things you once thought mattered. But in return, I'd saved a child and maybe even a mother from their own abyss. It wasn't the perfect ending of a TV drama, but this is real life where justice is always scratched and scarred, and all we can do is keep trying to be better day by day. Chapter 10. An Open Ending. Lessons. Hope and a New Family. Nearly half a year after the trial, it felt as though all of us had moved into a new chapter of our lives. Not exactly happiness, but not hell anymore either. Instead, it was a state of reality full of scars, but with more hope than before. Maria, after all her efforts to hold on, finally had to sell the restaurant to a big chain. I still remember that last day we closed, the whole team standing quietly in the kitchen, no one saying a word, just the long sighs of people who had poured their hearts out for what they believed was right. Maria hugged me and said, "You did the right thing. Don't let anyone make you doubt that." I found a new job at a smaller, quieter restaurant, much less drama. At first, I still carried a sense of constant vigilance. Every time a stranger walked in, I'd wonder if I'd ever see another Delena. But gradually, things softened. I learned to open up even as I kept a little notebook with me jotting down anything that felt off a self-defense habit I couldn't quite shake. One day, I happened to see Delena and her daughter again at a small park at the end of the street. It was their first unsupervised visit. Delena looked thinner, her eyes no longer blazing with fire, but instead filled with gratitude and a rare humility. She nodded in greeting. Her daughter, now more confident, ran up to say hello, showing me a colorful drawing. I smiled genuinely and wished them a peaceful day. When they left, I realized I wasn't angry or scared anymore, just relieved. The little girl was finally living the childhood she deserved, able to learn to play, to just be a child, instead of carrying the burden of being her mother's emotional crutch. Marcus and his new partner were always there, creating a safe, stable environment for her. I heard Delana was still going to therapy regularly, truly starting to acknowledge her mistakes and change, no longer turning her daughter into a weapon of revenge. As for me, I learned the most important lesson of all. Sometimes justice isn't about total victory. It's about the courage to speak up, to act, and to take responsibility for your choices. The truth doesn't win by itself. It needs someone to stand up, even if it's just an ordinary server, even if it means paying a price that nobody else can see. Maybe I'm no longer the anonymous storyteller I once was. Maybe now I'm someone grown, someone who knows pain, forgiveness, and hope. Every old wound reminds me choosing to speak out is always hard, but it can change a life, or even a whole family. I hope that someday every child can grow up without carrying the fears of adults. I hope every mother and father learns to heal themselves before they try to love someone else. And I hope that no matter how many Delina S there are in the world, there will always be someone brave enough to speak up for what's right. Thank you for listening to my story. If you ever find yourself in an unfair situation, remember, sometimes a small action, a word, a glance, a moment of standing up can change someone's destiny. This isn't a fairy tale ending, but it is a truth worth living. If you've listened this far, thank you for staying with me. through a journey full of storms, tears, and hope. Not just mine, but for anyone who's ever been swept up in a drama bigger than they could have imagined. I'm no hero, just an ordinary server who chose to stand on the side of the truth, even if it meant sacrificing my own peace. But I believe sometimes a small action, a single voice that dares to speak up, is enough to save a child from the darkness. If you're facing injustice or just trying to live true to your conscience in a world full of prejudice, remember you're not alone. Every story that gets told, every person brave enough to speak up for what's right, is another piece of hope in the world. See you in the next stories from True Reddit Reads. I wish you the courage to always be yourself, no matter what the world may throw at you.